It's felt really challenging to sit down and do this. Despite wanting to, maybe feeling more like it was necessary. I am acutely aware that something inside of me being awareness, and awareness specifically of what is within range of a certain field that I am experiencing as personal, that I am experiencing as myself. There's something here that really, really wants and has been thriving in the anger and the despair, and ego is certainly wanting this drama to add to the narrative of itself, the story of itself, the story of my life. It wants to add this to a list of defining moments where something, quote, went wrong, where something happened, there appeared to be a course unfolding, there was an expected direction, and that expectation was subverted. And so all of the kind of security based on its expectation of what the future would be like was called into question. And it can pinpoint 3 or 4 significant moments, at least, in this story where something happened, apparently catastrophic, apparently wrong, where something went wrong. And ego is really fond of that story and the victim identity that it can derive from that. And so it really, really wants to add this to that list, and it wants to bring up that list, and it wants to tell that story over and over and resurrect painful feelings from past moments, past experiences of expectancy violation, which is really just a word for surprise. And surprises are inherently neutral. It is just the way that you perceive that surprise as a positive or a negative thing that determines whether or not you are delighted by it or disturbed by it. And it wants to be disturbed. It's very clear that something here wants to be disturbed and is taking pleasure in the disturbance. It's taking pleasure in the evocation of despair and bitterness. God, there's so much bitterness, and there's a cynicism, there's resentment, there's all of this dark, heavy. I'm sure that while this is personal to a degree, there is something much larger that has connected here. This feels much bigger. It feels like a collective rage against the machine. And I am not judging that one way or the other. I am not saying it's a good or bad thing. It's just what it is. I feel this. I feel... and I'm doing everything I can to just watch and not try to control, but watch and experience this outpouring of rage. It's like hearing just a million overlapping voices of it's wrong, it shouldn't be like this. And I recognize that it's a strong victim wavelength here. And that there's a lot of resonance with that I'm experiencing within me. And that it likes it, that this is what it wants. It wants to feel victimized. It wants to feel threatened. It wants to feel indignation. It wants to feel angry. In many ways, it wants to feel unseen and unheard and unvalidated, even while it's screaming for the opposite. And this feels like the general collective sensation at the moment is this. There is a disgust. There is a strong feeling of disgust. Again, I'm not stating any of this as a that it's justified or unjust. It just is what is. This is what I'm experiencing, and I am endeavoring to, as a part of the neutral observation of it, just put it out there. Just relate what it is. There's a strong sensation of disgust, and this feeling of just like burn it all down, really. It's not warm and fuzzy. It's not loving, although I can be loving towards it, which is also what I want to do. I'm gonna let whatever comes up come up. I want to be loving and accepting towards this sensation, towards this experience, I don't want to be pushing this away. I don't want to try to annihilate this or control it. And I don't want to affirm it or deny it. I just want to accept it and say, okay, I love you. And I want to not just pay it lip service. I want to actually embrace it. That's what loving is. That's what loving is. It is a pure, neutral awareness that is so pure and so neutral that it's utterly accepting. It's that which adds nothing to this and detracts nothing from it, but sees it fully as it is and invites it to be fully that. And that's what I would like to do right now, is to love this, to love the sensation of disgust, to love the feeling of being fed up, disillusionment. That's a big word. That's certainly not the first time experiencing that, but that's the word that kind of encapsulates this. Disillusionment with life experience, disillusionment with the material world. And I'm aware that this feels like, I'm not sure how to put this, there are several different entities ego is involved, and then there is a collective sort of pain body and a personal pain body, which could be called a variety of things. That's the phrase that Eckhart Tolle uses. My understanding, my perception of that is that is the same as shadow, that word being used. It is this collection of things that are difficult to feel, that there is a part of ourselves that ego wants to feel but refuses to accept that it wants to feel, and so it's in constant denial of itself. It's the part of ego that ego has cut off from itself, essentially. But they feed each other, because ego is all about resistance, but it'll never admit that. So when you the parts of itself that are obviously resistant, it says, no, you're not allowed to be that way. You go in that corner, you go in that closet. Yes, you're depraved and inappropriate, and so I'm dissociating from you. It's the part of ego that it has tried to dissociate from. Neither of these things is you. Neither of these things is myself, my being, but they are they're happenings, like all form. They are an arising of form, which sensation also is. And as such, they're not themselves aware. They are not themselves conscious. They're not themselves actually living. They are just movement. They're just a particular sort of movement within being, within awareness. And as with all movement, they are perfect as they are. There is nothing wrong with them. They are not threatening. They're not a problem. They simply are. And as all movement, they rise and fall and return to being, which I am, which we are. And so they can be observed and appreciated as a part of the dance of form that we have been observing for millennia. Suffice to say, this pain body, this shadow, which wants to feel disturbed, which wants to feel angry, which wants to feel oppressed and hopeless, utterly despairing. And you can see how they are like one and the same, ego and pain body, but it's just, there's this like, ego is just the part that's standing in the light, and so they're doing this dance in tandem. And when I say the light, I don't even actually mean the light of consciousness. I just mean like it's visible. It's just more visible. Neither one of them wants to actually be seen. That's a great irony too. Neither one wants to be witnessed. It's like shadow wants to be seen by ego because it wants to be integrated into that whole, but ego doesn't want itself to be seen by consciousness. It's got these like conflicting programmed desires. It's fascinating. And so because ego doesn't want to be fully seen, it doesn't want to see shadow, because it knows if the integration starts, then it's going to continue. If it starts integrating shadow into itself, then it's going to be integrated back into consciousness. Of course, it doesn't have any real control over any of that. And it simultaneously, there's this deep longing. There's this longing within ego for annihilation. And maybe that is this shadow aspect, whatever. This longing for annihilation and the awareness that that means reabsorption into being. But it's terrified of that, and so it fights it tooth and nail. It's fighting its own desire. And so it's inherently resistant and in distress at all times. It's continuously suffering. Anyway, at the surface level, thought has been racing. It's been difficult to establish presence. And that is the primary source of the suffering that I've experienced, as always. The emotion, the sensation has very little to do with the actual circumstances surrounding me. Yes, the job situation is changing. Yes, there is grief around that. Grieving what was, grieving what felt like a very comfortable existence, and one that was easy, and one in which I got to work with my wife, and the work that I did was not terribly challenging, and there was plenty of free time, and it paid well enough to live on. And so there's a grief at the loss of that. And there is frustration with job hunting, with the very notion of finding another way for money to flow in. Because again, there's all this contradictory stuff happening. And so it's not the situation, it's this contradiction, this conflict of things within awareness. And ultimately, it is the identification with those conflicting voices and sensations that are obscuring presence. That's where the suffering comes from. That's where the really icky feeling comes from. It's that at the end of the day, at the bottom of this line, the present moment is being rejected and distracted from, and it's being lost in thought. It's being sucked into this identification with the voices that are arguing and the sensations that that's producing. And if I can simply have the awareness to see that, to witness that, and accept this deeper level of what is, then there is peace. Nothing has changed. None of it goes away. It just feels a little bit different. But it doesn't want that. It wants the drama to continue. It wants the story to continue. And the story is far more interesting to it. The story is that all of this is pointless. And it's based in some truth. That's the thing. That's what a good story is, isn't it? A good story has elements of truth, just enough of it to resonate, just enough of it to keep you reading, because something is there that's compelling you. You know, there's something in there that you feel is true. And so it takes something like the truth that nothing we do here actually matters in the way that we think it does. Everything we do here is growth. Everything we do here is experience. Are we actually doing anything here? Not really. Things are happening and we're experiencing the happening. And all of that is true and is wonderful. But from the mind's perspective, it's deeply upsetting. It's unsettling to let go of any control or credit, to let go of the narrative that what we're doing here matters for some other reason, that we must do it or else, that there's something at risk. Ego doesn't understand why you would do anything unless there was an end goal, unless there was some end towards which these means are being applied. If the achieving is just happening, if the growth is unstoppable and effortless, then its sense of self, its sense of identity, its sense of worth and value goes away. If there's nothing to fear, because nothing can go wrong, nothing can harm or threaten you, then what role does this protective mechanism have to play? If it's not needed, then why does it exist? So there's been great resistance in me towards finding other work. Sometimes it wanes, and other times it waxes into this tidal wave of that rage against the machine, of the whole notion, the very notion of working to live is absolutely backwards. Knowing that everything is free and that we are taken care of because we are nothing experiencing everything, and we are flowing through everything, and everything is moving in balance, in synchronicity, because it is alive inside, and because this is one life energy that is moving and experiencing and expressing and expanding continuously and effortlessly and abundantly. And so there is no work happening. There is sometimes friction, there is sometimes tension, which is desired, but it's not intended to be overcome. It's there because of the deliciousness of building up tension, like anticipation, and then feeling the ultimate relief of letting go. Because of the difference in feeling between if you hold something up for a couple seconds and then you let it go, and you hold something up for 10 minutes and you let it go. Because we want to experience what that relief is like, that the depth of it. And it's plunging us into deeper levels of ecstasy, ultimately, and deeper levels of trust. So the greater fear wave that's catapulting us into these deeper dimensions of trust. When we experience this terrifying fear and we let go into that, it takes more, that's a bigger letting go. And so I recognize that right now there is a bigger letting go happening that is possible for me. And it's been a challenge. I've let go. There have been days where I feel like, oh, I've done it. I've let go. I've surrendered what is to the universe. Let it be what it wants to be. Let this situation evolve as it desires to. Let me be moved to where, you know, life, the broader being that I am, wants this form to go, and let whatever it wants to flow through this. And I'm open. I'm open to that. I'm open to that. And I get a pretty good feeling in that place, and then I go to sleep. And then I wake up, and then the mind immediately takes over and goes, it's another day where you don't know what the fuck is going on. It's another day where you don't know where you're going and what's happening. It's another day. Well, you know, it was great yesterday to be open to the universe and say, whatever you want, universe, come through me. But today, bills got to be paid, and today children need to be fed, and you know, today you got to suck it up and get on with it, because you can't trust, because you can't wait. You're waiting for the universe to do something for you, and that's not how it works. You got to make it happen. And don't you know, nothing happens without your effort, and this is irresponsible, and it's dangerous, and it just berates, and it digs. And I know that's the challenge. That is the challenge that is presented for me, is to find the way to let go of that, and to let it go, not to push it away, because that just keeps it there. And that's what I've been trying to do, is to push it away, is to annihilate this doubtful voice that says, well, you tried trusting for a day and nothing happened, so you gotta get your ass in gear and make some moves, because clearly the universe isn't going to do it for you. Clearly you can't trust. Clearly you can't depend on the universe. And that's what hurts too, is allowing the influence of that voice, allowing that voice to scare me to the point. And it's because of this identification with it. It's thinking that it's my voice, or that it has any amount of validity, when really it's just energy. It's not any more personal or has any greater authority than the wind that is breezing through this car right now. It doesn't mean anything. But believing that it does, allowing it to mean something, buying into that story, and then holding that voice as a higher authority than my own, really hurts. It really hurts. And that's where so much of the despair comes in. It's a giving up of ground. It's a surrendering of my being. It's a surrendering of the only power that I actually have, which is to trust, to be my being, to be that which I actually am, to be presence. It's giving that up. It's allowing myself to be deceived. I would call that devil energy. It's not an entity by that name. It's just the way that this energy works. It is deceptive. It's belligerent. It bullies. It's profoundly logical. It knows how to argue. It will present you with all of the facts and all of the reasons and all of the evidence why you're just wrong. You're just clearly, obviously wrong. And it's time to just admit you're wrong, and again, just buckle down, put your head down, do the things that you don't want to do. And it'll use all of the language that you know against you. All of the spiritual lingo. It'll say you're blocking yourself. You're just afraid of growth. You're afraid of success. You're afraid of taking the necessary steps. That's what it says. Because of course, the devil comes disguised as the angel. It says, I'm trying to help. I'm helping you. You're asking for the way, I'm showing you the way. Apply for the jobs you don't want. Suck it up. Buckle down. I remember feeling this way and succumbing to it shortly before the accident that I had. The accident that changed, like, everything. It's the voice that says, this is just the way the world works. And it's not good or bad, right? It's neutral. So your resistance to involving yourself in it is foolhardy and detrimental. And it makes some great points. Which is why it's so challenging not to be lured in by it. Because I don't have an argument against it. Not really. But that's kind of the point. I had a dream. I've had a lot of interesting dreams. And it's been a while since I had these kinds of dreams, but at this point in time, I had them a lot. And a lot of them had to do with standing against adversarial energy. Energy that wanted to frighten me, that wanted to control me, that wanted me to give up my trust, my knowing. And in this particular dream, I had faced several individual manifestations of that. And I came to face this one that was bigger than the rest. And it didn't go down the way the rest did. I mean, with the rest, it was so easy. It was like all I had to do was feel a little confidence in myself and get this glint in my eyes and feel energy moving through me, and they just they disappeared. They literally disappeared. They poofed into smoke. And this one didn't budge. In fact, it laughed at me. And I don't remember what it said, but I remember the feeling. And the feeling was ridicule. It was you really think that you're doing something, or it was just, the pretty classic ultimate villain kind of vibe of you think you can defeat me, like Just you puny, you have no idea. I'm gonna crush you. I'm gonna destroy you, and everything that you think that you've done has been for naught. And I felt scared. I felt truly terrified. There was this feeling of, oh my God, it's right. It's right. I've been wrong. I've been a fool, and I'm gonna die. And then I felt this turn within myself that said, if I die, then I died doing what I believed in. And that can't be taken from me. I'm going to die trusting. I'm going to die knowing. And that was when this phrase of I would rather be the light than be right. And I would rather be loved than be loved. It was that. I would rather just be myself, trusting what I trust, and choosing to love, and I would rather die there and be scorned and be mocked and be ridiculed and be hated. I would rather that than to give that up. Than to stop trusting myself. I'm going to keep believing in the goodness of all, in the rightness of all, the beauty of all. Even if you believe me to be wrong, even if you prove me to be wrong in whatever way that you can prove, my belief in the rightness of all is so big and so inclusive that it allows that you're being right about me being wrong actually only reinforces that everyone can be right. It doesn't undermine this belief, it supports it. That's how deep I want to go into this trust, into this love. Because I know that's my power. My power is love. That's it. That's what it comes down to. That's what I am, loving awareness. And all of the joy that I experience comes from being that consciously, knowing that consciously. No place else. It doesn't come from any place else. It doesn't come from conditions of the material world. It comes from being myself, which means being loving awareness, which means being loving. I am loving. I am that energy, alive and aware. Not just loving. I am in motion. I'm not some static conceptual object. I am the living, breathing version. I am the experience. I am loving, aware, on purpose. And I know that that's where it all is. That's where all of the juice, all of the joy, all of the peace, all of the everything is in my being myself, which means being loving. Identifying as that and purely that. That means nothing else. That means not identifying as anything else. I can flow through everything, but ultimately this is all I am. This is what I am. I am loving. And when I am that, I am so acutely aware of my perfection, my completion. That nothing is missing, nothing is absent, nothing could be better than this, than my being what I am. And that nothing ever stops me from being what I am. Nothing about that. This can't change. This never changes. I am never not what I am. There is nothing that can obscure this. There is nothing that can stop it or step in the way of it. I simply am. And when I tap into that, everything shifts. I can see that it doesn't want me to, but it's a part of the testing. It's a part of the challenge. It's a part of how this works. It doesn't oppose because it's evil. It doesn't oppose because it's malevolent. It's because the nature of it is to oppose. And the desire for that opposition comes from love. And the application of that opposition comes from love. It's all love. Whether or not it wants to be seen as that, because that would kind of mess up the role that it's playing. So of course it's fighting that. Of course it's fighting being seen as love ultimately underneath, because it's trying to present itself as opposition to love. That's a part of the agreement. That's the desire, but it is underneath. It's the same loving awareness. And I've seen it before, and every time I see it and I forget and I see it again, and it's more beautiful every time. And I don't want to keep forgetting it, but I know a part of me clearly does. It's the aversion to forgetting. That's what I want to accept and to bring close is the acceptance of the forgetting, not pushing away my aversion to it, actually accepting all of it. Accepting that the forgetting happens, and accepting that I am afraid of the forgetting happening. And so I push it away. I fight it off, or I judge it when it does. But when I am simply being loving awareness, I am so purely now. I'm so purely right now. And it's not an obstruction of awareness of the circumstance or even of thoughts happening, but those things, they diffuse, they lose their potency, because it's nothing is brighter than me. Nothing it's just like cutting through the illusion, and the illusion is still happening, but it's not pulling me in. It's not convincing me the same way. So it loses the punch, it loses the power. It's not controlling me anymore with fear because of this decision to trust no matter what and to love no matter what. That this is the bottom line. This is the choice that I have. The choice that I have is that which precedes all other choices, which aren't really mine. All of this stuff that I can't control, but I can choose to love no matter what. I can choose to be loving and to focus myself there and just give up the rest. And that place is so powerful and so peaceful. It's so alive. It's not the separate, detached, dissociative kind of peace that I've experienced many times. That is really just a separating, a detaching. It's not that. It's a digging in. It's a diving in to what is. It's not a separation from it. It's just saying, okay, I accept all of what you say, but I still choose this. Maybe I do come to ruin. Maybe I utterly fail and collapse and I don't know, existence, I don't even know, like I'm destroyed. I'm still gonna be love. I'm still gonna trust that. Let whatever is destroyed be destroyed, then I'm still gonna love. If that were to mean the end of me, then I would go out loving. And that's it. And I trust that that continues, actually. But I'm not trying to figure it out. I'm betting on my own horse because it's the only thing that feels right to do. And I don't know what that means. I don't know what that means. I just know I have to do it. Anyway, I think that's about it for now. I didn't know what to expect when I sat down to record this. I had many other things moving throughout the day, things I thought I would say that I didn't, because this was more real and more pertinent. And this is where I want to be. This is where I want to be. Right here, right now. So thank you. Thank you for being here and now, also. Truly. There is no place more beautiful than this. There is no other place. But it really is a gift to share with you. Thank you for your witness. Take it easy.